Hello, thank you for joining our Hungry Fitness community call. Super excited about the topic this week and the presenter. We don't get to see Julie all the time because her other work conflicts sometimes with our weekly community calls. So I am so excited about this special call time. And she is going to be talking about social eating 101, kind of following up on her email from the weekly coaches corner that we send out every Sunday. And I'll just turn it over to you, Julie. And if I'm in and
Sure.
out, it's because this is like the school zone rush for me. So I might have to answer some kid questions. But please ask questions if you have them throughout the call. And we're excited to have everyone.
Awesome. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, go ahead and you can just kind of put them in the chat as we go and we can stop and talk about them. If you want to like raise your hand and ask a question or ask like about a personal experience, like that would be super cool. So I'm just going to kind of go over like the 10 tips that I shared in that email with like social eating. So when I say social eating, it can be holiday time, it could be summertime parties, just really eating in situations where there's going to be other people around and you might not always have complete control over the food that's available for you. So I'm going to go over our 10 tips for balanced eating in those social situations. So number one, I talk about this a lot with clients. I want you to consider your values when eating in social situations. And let me explain what I mean by that, because this is kind of like food relationship stuff. I dig into this a lot with clients. What your food values are, by that I mean, what do you like? What do you love to eat? What do you enjoy? What are you just eating because it's there? I love sweets. I'm a sweet eater. That's my jam. So when I go to a party or a social situation, if there is a lot of like chips and dip and things like that around, not to say that I don't like it, but that's not like my favorite thing. So if there's going to be stuff like that, but then also sweets involved, I'm going to kind of weigh my options and I'm going to decide, what do I want to have that's going to balance out? If there's like cheesecake and there's all these like cheese balls and dips and stuff, I know I'm going to want to eat the cheesecake. So I'm going to go lighter on like the appetizers and finger foods. So that's a perfect example of like how I'm balancing out my values, what I think is important for me, and what I know I'm going to enjoy. And not just when I'm eating because it's like socially acceptable or everybody is doing it. Alcohol is another good one with that. Like sometimes people are in a situation, they're just like, I feel like everyone's drinking, so I have to drink, but I don't really enjoy drinking. So are there like a low calorie option, a way that you could do that and still be involved, still have something in your hand? Maybe you're doing like LaCroix with some lime juice in there, or just like a fun little drink, something where you can be in that situation but you're not having to like participate in drinking alcohol. That would be a perfect balance of values, because you're telling me that that's not important to you by the way that you're responding to it. So any questions or comments on that, feel free to chime in.
I just love I love thinking that through ahead of time because I think a lot of times it's so easy when you're at a social gathering to just fall into like everyone's eating that, so I'm gonna have that too. But thinking through like how do I want to feel? I love using this for vacations, travel, events. How do I want to feel at the event or on the vacation? Like what are my priorities here? Um, what are the things that are going to rank like most important to me? Whether that's like trying the cuisine of where we're going or it's like spending quality time with the people that I love or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then also, how do I want to feel after the vacation? Because I love to try all the food, like eating my way through my vacations or where we're going is really fun
Yeah.
to me. And I'm just such a foodie. And so I might want to hit some special spots that I've looked up in advance of restaurants I really am excited about. Maybe we do that for dinner, or maybe we go out one time a day and like that's my opportunity to do that. And my other meals, I know like I'm hitting my protein, I'm getting in my water, I'm getting my veggies. So for me,
Yeah.
that's kind of a blend of my values. I want to have those experiences on my vacation, but then I want to feel good after my vacation. So that's probably
Mhm.
not a time for me to continue like a fat loss stage, but I could probably easily be in maintenance when I'm on vacation and feel really good, but also enjoy those foods. So thinking about that, like how do you want to feel at the party? What is important to you there? Like maybe it is having the cheese balls that are only there once a year, or maybe
Yeah.
it's just a bunch of store-bought crap that like you don't really care about and you'd rather prioritize time with others and like feel really good after. So
Yeah.
figuring out that, like, how do you want to feel there? What are your values? And then how do you want to feel coming off the event? Because you don't want to just feel like, man, I really let myself down. So I think
Hmm.
having that conversation with yourself before and thinking through not like what's even like the perfect thing to do, but like what is realistic for me and what expectations can I have here?
And there's nothing wrong with like going into an event thinking, I just want to enjoy my friends or I just want to go and enjoy
Yeah.
my family. But like, I think thinking back on like your values helps you to assess that situation on the fly. Like when you go into it, like if there's not any, for me, if there's not any desserts or anything sweet there to eat, I'm like, I'm fine. Like, I know that I can balance this out. I'm not, this isn't where I want to like spend a ton of stuff. So like, this is going to be okay and manageable for me. But if there were sweets available that I know I want to have, like, okay, then I gotta strategize a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned a couple of different times going into like the second tip. So in the second tip for it, it's assess your availability and like the importance of that. If you are, Christmas time, your grandma makes lemon bars, and that's the only time of year that she makes lemon bars, and they are amazing, you better be eating them, whether you're in a deficit or not. Like, that is where like joy is with eating food, right? Like, and also with maintenance. Like, I think that assessing your values, the best time to do that is when you're at maintenance, because you're
Yeah.
not going to have to like weigh it out. Like, okay,
Mhm.
if I eat this, then I might not make the progress that I'm looking to make this week. Is that okay? You don't have to worry about that when you're at maintenance. So
Yeah.
that really helps you to kind of figure out like what your values are with those foods. But
I
like
love that.
assessing your availability and its importance, I think is huge. Because things are so easily accessible to us now. It's
Yes.
crazy.
And I just actually had that thought. Um, with things like around the house, even, I feel like it's so easy to mindlessly eat things that are so easily accessible, but you're just either drained, you're tired, you're overextended, stress is high. And so then there's something there, like cereal, for instance. I'm just gonna grab a quick handful. I actually did this week and I had this exact same values conversation with myself. Cinnamon checks are like my favorite thing ever. And they were just sitting
Uh,
out. And I can buy those any time of the week. And I totally just grabbed a few when I was eating dinner. And then before I know it, I had like four handfuls. And I'm like, hey, now I'm logging my food right now. So after logging that, I realized that was not my smartest choice. I would have way rather have been intentional and either sat down and ate them and enjoyed them than like mindlessly eating them while I was doing something else.
yeah.
And also recognizing to myself, like, oh, that was a little, I was really drained that day. My recovery was super low. And I knew like I'm not as resilient to those on the fly decisions when I'm
Mm,
low energy. And so that was just an awareness point for me. And I've been thinking about food and nutrition for years. And so I think just recognizing too, like we all have those moments. But being able to reflect on them after and recognize, like, okay, what happened here? Why was that such like a trigger for me? And then also,
yeah.
is that food special to me? Like, no, next time that comes up and I see my favorite cereal, I can be like, hey, that's not in the plan for today. Or I can
Right.
make it in the plan and be intentional. But also that's something I can buy literally anywhere at any time. And
Mhm.
so it's not a special food. And so I think that's something to remember as well. I loved
Mhm.
your point on that. But sometimes
Yeah.
it is a really special food and it's worth it. So like sit down
Right.
and savor it.
Mhm. I love it. Yeah. So tip number 3, portion control. So you could have had just one
Portion it
handful
out. I know this. Yes.
if that was what you wanted to do, right? But I think that just kind of tagging on that with, when you're in a social situation or like for you, you said it was dinner time, you were probably cooking dinner, right? Like
Yeah, and we were
you're
way
around
past
food.
my planned
Yep.
dinner time, so it's like hangry. Oh, maybe
You're
have
around
a couple
food,
of
you're
those.
smelling it, you're seeing
Yes.
it, you've got all these sensations, you're hungry. Like that
Yes.
is the hardest time to like deny yourself to eat something. And a lot of times in social situations, you're going either like before dinner or you're not having dinner and you're skipping dinner to go to this event. And so like hunger is high. You're genuinely hungry. So it's not, you're not disciplined enough to avoid eating that food. It is literally because your body is like, no, now is the time to eat. And all these things could easily give me what I want, you
Yeah,
know?
absolutely.
But portion control, that's tip number 3. So just understanding, I think number 1, understanding what the foods that you're eating contain. So what are things that are a little bit more caloric dense, maybe some of those like cheese balls and stuff like that, chips and things that are easily accessible, those are going to be a little bit more caloric dense, but you are going to get a decent amount of volume there. Like you're going to have quite a few bites, but if there are something like fresh veggies that you can eat with those dips, that's going to be a much better choice. You're going to get a lot more bites from that. And then tip number 4, so balancing your plate. So that is exactly what I'm talking about in terms of volume. So see what your options are. A lot of times in these situations, you don't know what's going to be available. So you might have a plan going in and you might be like, you know what? I'm going to go there and I'm only going to have 1 glass of wine. I'm not going to eat any food. And you get there and you're like, I'm ravenous. I want to eat something. And you have to change your plan on the fly and you don't know what they have. I think assessing the situation before you're impulsively choosing to eat something is a really good idea. So balancing out your plate, looking at what options are available, and then again, going back, assessing your values, assessing your portion control. If you want to have, I'm a high volume person. I like lots of bites. It's more worth it for me to do cucumbers with like a dip than to do chips because I want to eat lots of bites of that. So thinking about all those things in the moment is a good idea. And it's not always intuitive. But the more that you do it, the easier it becomes and it's not such a stressor. I think that's one thing that people need to understand. Like going into it right now because you're new to it feels a little overwhelming. But once you're used to doing it, it comes a little bit easier. It's not so stressful. Listen to your body. So back to what you said, Michaela, about like how do you want to feel after? Um, Alcohol is a perfect example of that. I know a lot of people that are like, I like to have some drinks, but I feel like crap the next day, or I get up the next day and I have a headache, or they just it's not, they don't feel their best. So I think that having alternatives in those situations and understanding what you like if it's the taste of those drinks, I'm sure there is non-alcoholic options that you could choose. If it's the social situation of like having a drink, you might not even need to have a alcoholic beverage. Other things, higher fat foods. I think a lot of times people have digestive issues with that, whether it be stomach cramping or like diarrhea. Nobody wants that. But sometimes people are like, genuinely, this food is worth it. Like it tastes so good. So that kind of goes back to like portion control. Okay, well, maybe having a smaller portion then wouldn't upset your stomach so much and you'd be able to have both and be happier. So really listening to your body and having understanding that like sometimes these foods that are causing you discomfort just aren't the right option for you, and your body is telling you that. Tip number 6, all foods fit. And that's the beauty of macros. I feel like we talk about it time and time again. You can literally eat anything. Every single food contains calories. Every single food contains protein, carbs, and fat. Evaluate it. And I think this is, again, another one that really goes back to values. Like if you can have or want to have, let's say 50 grams of carbs at a meal, what do you want to have that from? Do you want a balance of some pasta and some bread? Or are you like, I could care less about the pasta. I'm going to go veggies and protein and have more bread. Like you could totally do that. So I think that that's important to remember to help kind of get some of that diet culture verbiage and rules out of your brain.
Yeah.
All foods fit.
I'm totally a swap the spaghetti noodles for spaghetti squash and give me a good big piece of garlic bread. Like
Same.
that. Yeah. Noodles, whatever.
Yep.
Yeah.
Same.
So I think, and then, but sometimes it's like, maybe you want real ice cream and not some protein ice cream. Like maybe you want to have a real sugar filled dessert and a
Yeah.
smaller portion than having a bigger portion of like a stevia flavored dessert. So
Yep.
thinking that through too, I like to add volume. I love volume too. Like I love to eat.
Hmm.
And so I would rather add volume with like vegetables and things like that, and then
Yeah.
have the actual dark chocolate that makes me happy versus a like a gummy that's like protein filled or something,
Hmm.
like a fiber filled gummy or something.
Yep.
So
Yep.
think about
I'm the
that, like
same way.
what is
Same.
important to you, and then what do you just want to have the real thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Weigh your options. What do you value? That's me and ice cream. I will pass on protein ice cream every single day to have like the tiniest little dish of
Yes.
like the
Yeah.
real thing. I just think it's so
But
much more
also,
worth it.
like, I can have a low calorie drink from Starbucks, and I'm just as
Hmm.
happy with like a 150-calorie drink than like a 400-calorie drink.
Yeah.
Or same, like I love my protein hot chocolate. That tastes just as good to me as a regular hot chocolate. So I'm gonna make that swap. So I think the more you track your food and you pay attention and you assess how you feel and what you love and what you don't really care for, like the easier those decisions will get for sure.
Yeah. And that's why I think like when you're working on food relationship and you're asking yourself those questions, a lot of people come into it and they're like, well, how am I supposed to kind of get out of the noise of diet culture if I'm tracking my food? And the reason is because it is building knowledge, and that knowledge you're not going to ever lose. And that comes down to like, okay, if you go out to a party, you want to enjoy yourself. You want to enjoy the people you're with. And that's actually tip number 7. Enjoy the moment, enjoy your family and your friends. But if you're eating something that you've never made, you've never prepared, you don't know what the ingredients are, you don't know what the content is, you are eating just completely blind. And the purpose of knowing what the content is of that food is not to make you feel guilty for eating it. It's for you to validate that you are choosing to eat that and there's nothing wrong with it. Whereas I think a lot of people that feel food guilt after they eat something, it's because they can never justify what they're eating.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, knowledge is power. So it's like the hardest thing in the world for me when clients don't want to log their food and they feel like it's too much work or effort. They just want me to tell them what to eat. That's so I immediately know like this person is not going to be successful because they're
Mhm.
not willing to put in the work to learn about something that's going to truly empower them, because yeah, I can tell you what to eat and like that might work for a couple weeks, and then you're going to have a crazy schedule and you're not going to be able to do what I say, and you're
Right.
not going to know what to eat in this scenario. And so that might work for the short term, but once I'm no longer there, you aren't going to know what to eat. And so our goal is always to give you education and give you tools so that you can steer the ship yourself. Like this should
Exactly.
be a doable thing and a sustainable thing, and you don't have to log forever. I think learning what food has in it, like what foods have protein, what foods have carbs, what
Mhm.
foods have fats, gives you it empowers you so that you can have flexibility in your diet. You don't have to follow a meal plan.
Yep.
And then also you quickly can gauge like, oh, that's 4 ounces of protein on my plate. So you don't
Mhm.
need a log forever. You'll get a gauge and you'll just remember all of those things, and you can carry that knowledge forward and use it how you want. That
And you always have the tools in your pocket to go back to if you need them. So,
exactly.
yeah. Yeah. Um, Tip number 8 is stay hydrated. That's another great one with alcohol. If alcohol is in the situation, I think doing either water at the same time or doing water in between beverages can really, really help. I really like the idea of kind of um, giving yourself, I hate to call them rules, but I always, when I think of them from my perspective, it's like, okay, this is my rule for myself. But it's just a way to help you to give yourself some guidance and give yourself something to stay disciplined on. Like maybe if whatever size beverage you have, you drink equal size in water in between having another beverage. I think that that really helps to kind of balance out drinking alcohol.
Make
It
myself
also allows you to
happy.
stay. What?
I
And
said even
caffeine.
with caffeinated beverages.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, for
With
sure.
any
For sure.
non-water beverage. Try to
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
equal water.
I mean, especially if you're out at a restaurant, you're getting easily a 20-ounce cup of anything that you get. So, even if you're doing something that's like no calorie, if you're doing like a diet, I think that it's a good idea to do a glass of water that's equal size in between those. I think that can really help. And it does help to avoid like the snacking and grazing, because if it is that mealtime and hunger is high and all of those cues are happening, you're probably a little bit dehydrated as well, kind of going from lunch, not necessarily dehydrated, but thirsty. So, that's going to help with those habits as well. And then number 9, practice mindful eating. So this, going back to what Michaela was saying about grabbing the checks, right? Like, you want to be mindful and present. Plate your food. Don't eat out of bags. Don't eat out of containers. Put the food in front of you that you're going to eat. Look at it, be able to enjoy it and embrace it. When we're eating out of baskets, there have been so many studies done on this. We cannot accurately calculate what we have consumed when we're consuming out of like platters and bags and baskets and things like that, like if you're in a social situation eating. So have a plate in front of you, plate your food. And if you can, I would really recommend plating what you plan on eating, like in its entirety from the get-go, because you're really going to get an idea of what the volume looks like on your plate. So try not to graze off of your plate. Plate what you're going to eat entirely and then have that. I think it's much more mindful, and it's going to give you many more cues of like, wow, this is what I'm about to eat.
Yeah. I love that tip too for when you're eating out at a restaurant to just get your
Mhm.
appetizers with your meal. So
Yeah.
plate your chips and that you're gonna have with the salsa and your meat. You can just put it all there versus um,
Yeah.
eating and then like if you don't see the food coming, it's hard to gauge how much you're actually eating. Like where if you just had it all on your plate to begin with, like would you load your plate that high?
Exactly. And that perception, I think a lot of
Yeah.
times people get done eating. So let's talk about like a Mexican restaurant, right? They get done eating and they're like, oh my gosh, like I should not have had that third taco. I'm so full. And their plate of dinner food is immediately the problem.
Yeah.
That is the reason why they feel uncomfortable
Not
and
that
they
half
feel
bag
full
of
and they ate
chips.
too much. Exactly. Yeah. It's not all the chips and dip that they did beforehand and the queso and like, but
Yeah.
like because they felt really good when they were eating that because their belly was empty.
Mhm.
um and then you're also really lengthening out your meal time, and depending on like if it's a really
Yeah.
busy night at the restaurant, you may be like starting to have undigested food on top of digested food. Yes, I said that correctly. And that can cause some digestive distress. So I think that that is a perfect tip. Like if you're going to get an appetizer, just tell them bring the appetizers with your plates, with your meals.
Yeah.
And then the last tip is really just kind of plan ahead, but be flexible. Have a plan going in, be realistic about it. Like, don't go into it and be like, I'm just going to go and hang out and have a glass of water, because we all know that's not going to happen. So be realistic. If you can bring things in a situation like that, like bring something that for you is like a safety food. You can, if you're a grazer because you're awkward in social situations, bring something that you can graze on and isn't going to be super caloric dense. Bring some sliced cucumbers with some
Yes.
tahini or salts or something and like have at it.
Cucumbers are the best. I love
I
doing
know.
rice vinegar, just
Yes.
cucumbers with rice vinegar and a bunch of salt. It like really
Hmm.
satisfies just that savory
Salty
taste and
savor.
salty too.
Yeah.
And you can eat as many as you want because they are pretty
Yeah.
much calorie free. I
Yeah.
also love in like summertime squeezing a bunch of lemon juice on cucumbers and
Mm,
lime juice. You can probably do lemon though. Lime
yeah.
juice on cucumbers, a cucumber lime, and then just add
Yeah.
salt to that. Also
Oh.
very delicious. Also another really high volume, low calorie food in the summer is watermelon. I love to bring that to gatherings. And same thing, you could just I've squeezed a bunch of lime juice on watermelon
Mm-hmm.
before with
Mm.
some salt, and that's also really good. Uh,
Yes.
so just like getting creative, thinking about what is something I could just like keep munching on and I would be just fine. Um,
Right.
and same with like veggies with Greek yogurt or sour, like a low fat sour cream with ranch
Yep.
seasoning mixed in. Like that's a pretty great
Yep.
option. Some protein in it. It's lower calorie, not super high fat. And
Mm-hmm.
it's good. You could dip veggies in that too. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
coming up
I
with some
love
ideas.
it. Yeah. And those were the 10 tips. So all of those tips were in our newsletter this week.
Yes. So join our newsletter if you guys don't already get it. And let us know if you need it. I think it's linked on Hungry Fitness too on the links. So thank you so
Mm.
much, Julie, for hosting the
You're
call.
welcome.
And I think Julie might have 1 or 2 client spots open too. So if you're looking for
Yeah, I have two.
one-on-one coaching, she has 2 spots open. And you can just fill out an application and apply to work with her. She is an incredible coach, especially for those that want to work on relationship with food. I have read so many positive reviews from her clients on just completely changing their relationship with food. So we are lucky to have her. Thanks, Julie.
Thank you.
Now, if you guys have any questions, hope you have a great week.